In this video, we are going to go over infinitives and expand the types of infinitives that we, of course, are going to know. First and foremost, at the very beginning, hopefully you remember back in Latin 1, I used to put this on the board incessantly, which represents the second principal part, is the infinitive. The infinitive is the conjugation, and it gives the present stem. And there you can see, obviously, all the ones that are there. But, in fact, infinitives are like participles in that, as you can see, I've made a chart here. They come in present varieties, perfect varieties, future varieties, and they can be active or passive. So just like participles, theoretically there should be 6 different infinitive forms. And in fact, unlike participles, there are 6 different forms. And there are going to be none that have an X like the participle chart does to the right. Now, also in this video, I'm going to be embedding 3 car companies that by watching this video and hopefully learning about infinitives, you can learn those 3 car companies and earn yourself an easy 100. So, let's start out. So we're going to use the same verb that we have over here, ago, agere, egi, actus, and fill in the chart with various different forms of it. And also I'm going to look at the study guide over infinitive forms that I have provided for you on Canvas. So, first and foremost, we should now start saying the second principal part is the present active infinitive. And as we can see, there's the form that it would have for agere, and so I can just go ahead and write that in there. So, agere. The translation of the infinitive, as we have come to know, is simply in this instance going to be to verb. In this case, it'll be obviously to drive. Now, it's really easy to remember the difference between the active forms of the present infinitive and the passive forms of the present infinitive, in that a long ARE is going to become a long ARI. A short ERE is going to become, or I should say long ERE, is going to become a long ERI. A short ERE, however, is going to disappear altogether and just then be replaced with a long I. And then, of course, a long IRE is going to turn into a long IRI. So it makes plenty of sense that the E's turn into an I for those that have long vowels before the re, and those that have a short ERE just turn into a long I. So, following this pattern over on the right-hand side of my chart, agere, to drive, passively is going to turn into agi. Now, to drive, and to make that passive, obviously, then it will become the translation to be driven that we see there. Now, perfect infinitives. The perfect active infinitive is going to employ the perfect active stem. So that's what you take, the perfect active stem, and then all you have to do is put an ending on it that is a particular one. And so let's go ahead and do that. For ago, agere, egi, actus, it has the long EG as the perfect stem, first principal part, second principal part, third principal part, and therefore I can put that down. Long EG, eg, and then obviously all I have to do is that you will add to every single one isse. And so you will recognize the perfect active infinitive by the fact that it will have that isse. Now the translation of a perfect active infinitive, when you see it, is going to be not to verb, but put that word in English in there. That, of course, is going to signify a completion, and that is the verb, or helping verb, has or have, and have is going to be it here. So, to have verbed. In this instance, to have driven. And so, isse. And I'll show you more examples of that in just a moment. By the way, your first car company is Volvo, V-O-L-V-O. It is a Swedish car company, but the Latin translation is I roll. Nevertheless, Volvo. So, you go to the perfect passive infinitive. And it is going to be reasonable that perfect and passive, it's a paraphrastic. And so what you're going to do is that you're going to take the perfect passive participle, actus aum. I'll write it here. Actum. I will choose. And then all you have to do is add a form of the verb to be. Well, since we are making infinitives, then for this paraphrastic, it's most reasonable that the form of the verb to be that you will add is going to be the infinitive form. And that would be esse. Now, here I would like to note something. I could have chosen all 30 endings, us, and so forth and so on, all the way down for all 10 of the second declension, usi, o, e, or, me. So these all of the first declension, e-a-m, long a, and so forth and so on. But I like to, when it is infinitives in my chart, to pick an accusative. That is because we are going to learn a construction later on in which I will seemingly go against everything that I've ever taught you concerning subject, nominative. In fact, infinitives themselves, in and of itself, the word infinitive means without an ending giving a subject, but it can have a subject. It is that the infinitive, when it does have a subject, is going to be accusative. And so that's why I like to have an accusative ending on it, because if it were to have a subject, the infinitive, it's going to have an accusative subject, and they have to have agreement, subject-verb agreement. Now, if this is translated to have driven, then over here, you need to make that passive, and that is to have been driven. And that's the translation that you have. Now, down here, there is the future active infinitive, and that's also going to be a periphrastic. It's the, of course, future active infinitive periphrastic form. And again, the way that you make a periphrastic, you take a participle, and since we're making a future active infinitive, we will take the future active participle. And again, I will take here acter, and then again, I like to have an accusative ending, because if it were to have a subject, it would be an accusative subject. And so let's go with feminine plural, and so therefore, actoras, and then all you have to do here is add to it the essay. Now, I'm not going to give you the translation, because most of the time, this is going to be in that construction, it's called an indirect statement, in which it'll be functioning as a finite verb with a subject. It just happens to have an accusative subject. But if you were to translate it, I suppose, you would translate it, again, idiot-proof, in that you translate that as though you see it alone, which you do not. It is a part of that. And then, obviously, translate that the way that it would appear. So, to be, and then about to drive. But again, you're not going to see it outside of the construction of indirect statement. Now, this one over here is the unicorn. You never see it. It doesn't exist for the most part. I've only seen the future passive infinitive 3 to 10 times in my life. Not very often. I read thousands of lines of Latin. And so, I give it to you, you learn it, but it is never, ever, ever seen. And it's weird. It just is. And so I'm not going to really talk about it that much. These 5 are the important ones to know, but we do need to make sure that we know this one as well. The way that you form it is that you're going to take, believe it or not, the perfect passive participle, actus, and again, I like it to have an accusative, so we'll go with actas, we have already done. Let's go with actos, I suppose. And then the second form of the word that goes with it to create this periphrastic is actually the passive of the verb to go. If ire is the verb to go, that's the passive, to be gone. And no way I'm going to offer up a translation for you for this one outside of indirect statement, because, like I said, you hardly ever, 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 ever see it. Your second car company is Audi. A-U-D-I. Audi is your second car company. All right, so let's quickly look at a couple of examples in my study guide that I have made. And here it is, and that is available to you. And in this study guide, it lays it out in that the present infinitives, you'll see are, ere, or ire. And for the passive, you remember, it's going to be are becomes ari, ere becomes eri, ere becomes I, and ire becomes iri, just like that. And again, for the perfect, you take the perfect active sim, and you add an essay to it for every one. Over here, you take the perfect passive participle, and an essay as obviously a second word. For the future active participle plus essay as the second word, and the perfect passive participle for plus an iri as the second word that is there. And so you can see the examples that I've given down here, down at the bottom. I'm looking for something to scroll. There we are. And scroll down, and here you can see them all in their full glory. Amare, to love, amare, to be loved. Videre, to see, videre, to be seen. Or remember, this verb can also mean to seem in the passive. Mittere, to send, miti, to be sent, audire, to hear, audiri, to be heard. Amawese, to have loved, amatumese, to have been loved. Videse, to have seen, visam esse, to have been seen, or to have seemed. Misis is to have sent. Misos esse is to have been sent. Auditus esse to have heard. Auditas esse to have been heard. Note, accusative, 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 accusative. Why do I put an accusative ending? Because if it were to have a subject, it will have an accusative subject. And then down here, the perfect passive, or I should say the future active participle plus esse. Amaturum esse. Visurum esse. Misuros esse. Audituras esse. And then the unicorn. The perfect passive participle plus the passive of the verb to be. Your third and final car company is BMW, and hopefully with this knowledge you will be able to take the quizzes over the infinitive forms and do well. Good luck, learn the forms.